Hey everyone, I know what you're thinking. Crickets. Crickets. Yeah, it's been a minute. Okay, it's been a minute. I do apologize. I am engaged. I'm engaged. It's become my whole personality trait that I'm getting married. And so it's literally taken over everything that I've done and everything I am doing, as it should, because it is the second most important life event. First is having a child. A child.
Boom. A child. No.
You know, so it's very important. And I've just been kind of putting, I wouldn't say my life on pause, just like my extracurricular activities on pause. I also know what you're thinking. Yes, I am a pirate and a mind reader because I know what you're thinking. I borrowed this shirt from my dad because you can obviously tell we're going to be talking about Lake Lanier today. But if you don't know anything about Lake Lanier, or you don't know like recent events about Lake Lanier, it is now operated, part of it is now operated by Margaritaville. So I feel like the shirt was only fitting. I have purchased my dad not a lot. I've purchased my dad a few shirts from Margaritaville because I worked there last summer, and I have to put it out there according to my like associate handbook that I signed last summer. I have to legally announce that I no longer work there. Thank you. So I bought him a lot of shirts when I worked there because he loves Margaritaville. He loves Jimmy Buffett. So that's besides the point. I don't really know how much I can talk about from my personal experience from being employed for the company, because they're very, very strict on what you can and cannot say. Like, they don't even allow press into the island unless, like, there's very specific things that they allow press to say about the place. If you have seen any videos on this channel before, I do my makeup and I talk at the same time. With me not being able to do my makeup a lot because I've been wedding planning and just been trying to relax, I've been trying to read like a lot of books. My goal this year was to read every single Stephen King book. I've only read one this year so far. I've just been enjoying my Kindle so much and just been trying to read like all the free books on there that I can, because I don't want to pay for a subscription. This I have to sneeze. This is getting off topic, but I was going to do my makeup for this video, and I'm sitting here with all my makeup in front of me, and I'm just looking at it like I really don't have the energy to do this today. Like, I really just don't. I had like a whole makeup look planned. Like, I was gonna do like a ghost-esque kind of look. Like, I was gonna make my eyes look a little sunken in and my nose, and like I was like partly decomposing, but I just really, really don't have the energy to do that today. So I think that I'm just gonna talk. I'm just gonna talk to you guys, if that's okay with you. I knew that I wanted to keep this channel alive. I know I wanted to keep the spirit of this alive. I would go get my lizard because this channel name is named after her, Bones, Boots, and Beauty. However, she is shedding right now and she's very angry, so I'm not gonna bring her out. But yeah, this video is nothing that my channel is supposed to be, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be. It is going to be a new endeavor that I'm going on. This whole thing is going to be called The Deep End, and I'm gonna go into the deep end about Lake Lanier, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a really good time. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So now we can get into it. So I have been going to Lake Lanier my entire life. I've spent countless days on the boat, paddleboarding in the refreshing green, trying really hard to imagine that the water is blue. camping on the shorelines, jet skiing, swimming. I heard stories growing up about the lake, but until a few years ago, I had no idea just how dark and demonic the lake is. Now, the locals, they will tell you that every lake has a dark past and there's something underneath every lake, but there's constantly deaths here and a long history of it. So I have been writing about Lake Lanier for days now. So I have like a whole bunch of information that I've gathered from websites. So if you catch me looking down, that's what I'm doing, just to make sure that everything I'm saying is factual. Lake Sidney Lanier, like most lakes in the United States, was not always a body of water. There's actually multiple bodies, if you will. Founded in the late 18th century in what is now Forsyth County, Oscarville was an agricultural and business epicenter. It was located in a Rocky Mountain valley, so after Emancipation Proclamation, after Emancipation, it allowed Black families to purchase and develop their own land. Around this time, according to the New Georgia Encyclopedia, 45% of the state was Black. Oscarville was mostly known for its poultry farming, cotton production, and trade business. To this day, the area of Gainesville, Georgia, which literally touches Forsyth County, Gainesville, Georgia, is still known as chicken capital of the world. The world. And when I tell you, I get so depressed driving through Gainesville because not only does it stink bad. But there's so many chicken trucks. Like, you see like hundreds of chickens on this truck. And it makes me want to cry every time. Like, they don't even know that they're being taken to be slaughtered. Like, but yeah, it's actually illegal in Gainesville to eat chicken with a fork. Like, you can get a ticket for eating chicken with a fork. But Gainesville is only known as the chicken capital of the world all because of Oscarville. So since it was harder for them to grow corn, since it was harder for them to grow cotton, they successfully grew corn instead. And a lot of the families had insane amount of property sizes. The most successful farm was 200 acres, and it was owned by a Black farmer named Joseph Kellogg, who was dominating the white landowners. Dominating. Like, none of them could compare to that. And the fact that, like, you know, they're being dominated by a Black man in this time, I'm sure, well, we know what happens. I know what happens. But, just a little preface for that. By 1910, the population was 1,100 people, and they had schools, churches, general stores. It was becoming a booming place for the farming industry. Things took a very dark turn, though, in September of 1912. There was a young woman, May Crow, a young white woman. She was found presumably raped and murdered and hung in a tree. Well, there's multiple people who said that she was left hung in the tree, and there's people that say she was found like at the foot of the tree, but it was outside of the woods of Oscarville. Well, I guess it made more sense to be racist and blame people of the opposite race for doing something like this. So there was a group of entitled white men who were called the Night Riders, and it's essentially the K's. They were very quick to blame the blacks, and so they took fireballs and they were setting structure fires, and some people even died in church by the fireballs. Church, the place of peace for all these people in a time of chaos and hell. They literally set it on fire and just shot fireballs into a church. It's a lot. So Sheriff Reed arrested Rob Edwards, Ernest Knox, and Oscar Daniel. Ernest and Oscar were executed by an all-white jury. That's what I have to say about that. While Rob Edwards was lynched by locals in the local city of Cumming before even getting a trial. Not that it would have made a difference anyways, because it would have been an all-white jury. Yeah, he was lynched. I couldn't find any information anywhere about how these 3 specific black men were somehow related to the crime. I mean, I'm sure they weren't related at all, but I don't know how it came to the conclusion that these 3 men, like, why them? Why them? I'm sure there was somebody who was like, witch! You know, like there always is. There's probably someone like, oh, I saw him in the woods. I saw him walking outside of his house. He came from outside. You know, I'm sure it was something like that. I'm sure it was. So since they're just lynching black men and putting black men on trial to an all-white jury, all hell broke loose. You thought it broke loose before? It's breaking loose now. The white population forced out more than 1,000 black people. More than 1,000. They forced them all out. They said, leave. Here's the crazy thing, right? Until 1990, okay? Like year of the, whatever year that was, okay? I wasn't alive then. I wasn't even thought about then. Until 1990, black people were no longer allowed to live in Forsyth County. 1990. That makes me so mad. My mom knows that I'm doing this little podcast thingy, whatever you want to call it. And she told me a story about how one of her best friends, Sandy, she had come up from Atlanta. I think she lived in Atlanta. I'm not really sure. But she'd come from a local area, and her and my mom made the decision to go out on the lake this day, Lake Lanier. And Sandy, for some reason, didn't tell my mom that she didn't know how to swim. And so Sandy was like laying on a raft or something in the water, and she just started like sinking. Like she started drowning, and some white redneck man went running into the water and saved her life. And like that was a time where she was not even allowed to live in that county. Like that just blows my mind that my parents lived at a time where racism was still like, I mean, it's always going to be an issue. Like it's always going to be an issue. Someone's always going to be racist. But I mean, like, that's insane to me. Yeah, so anyways, thank you to that redneck man who saved Sandy's life. Appreciate you. Back to Oscarville, many folks died while fleeing to the local city of Gainesville. Remember the city I said that is now the chicken capital of the world? Many people fled to Gainesville because it was the closest, the most convenient, they could get there easily. While they fled, the white population started to take over their farms, their houses, literally everything. They took it over. I have personally heard different stories from every local. There's stories that they flooded out the town, like they didn't even let the black population leave. They literally just opened the floodgates to hell and just drowned out the town, and people drowned, and that's how they died. But I've also heard that, I mean, I literally found like documents that they forced them out, and I don't know if they forced them out with pitchforks. Witch! He's a witch! I don't know how they did it. But I mean, I do, because this is how it's documented, but also documents back then were not that great. So Just wanted to put that out there. If you're local, you're like, well, I thought they drowned out the town. We're getting to that. So after the destruction, I'm not sure how they got involved, but for some reason, the COE, which the Corps of Engineers, United States Corps of Engineers, they decided to put up a dam. And what did they name it? Buford Dam. So a little history here. If you've ever been to the Mall of Georgia, there is a statue on top of the mall, and it is Buford. I don't remember his first name. I learned about him in like 8th grade. But if you're local here, you have definitely seen the statue on the mall, and you're like, who is that? I thought it was like Benjamin Button. Like, I didn't know who that was. I remember I had like a test, and I cheated because I texted my mom and said, who's on the top of the mall? And she didn't know what I was talking about. So I got that answer wrong anyways. But that's how I remember that it is Buford. Not Phineas and Ferb. It's Buford. Alexa, who is standing on top of the Mall of Georgia?
There's no one actually standing there. It's a 9-foot fiberglass statue of Button Gwinnett, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, perched above the Mall of Georgia's main entrance.
Thank you. Okay, so...
You're welcome. Happy to help with that Button Gwinnett mystery.
It's Button Gwinnett. It's not Buford. I actually did not have that written down in my notes. I was like, you know what? It's just going to be a fun little fact that I put in there. I've been schooled. According to All About America, the dam was built to prevent flooding and to provide a consistent water source for the growing city of Atlanta, which I actually read an article the other day saying that Atlanta could no longer take water from Lake Lanier. So it's just a little funny to me that they did all of this and for the city, and now the city can't even take water from them anymore. So all of this was for nothing. They also wanted to use it for hydroelectric power generation and recreational activities. So the Corps of Engineers purchased and seized thousands of acres. They not only purchased the acres from the white farmers, but I'm not sure if they purchased any from the blacks. But remember how I said that some of them went to Gainesville? Well, they didn't go far enough from Oscarville, I guess. So they also, the Corps of Engineers, forced them out again. And they gave them little to no help, obviously, because why would they? So homes and buildings were demolished or relocated, but most structures were left behind. So like I said, record keeping in the 1900s was basically non-existent. Like, it was not great at all. So a lot of undocumented and unmarked graves were just left to lie beneath the water. You know, why not? In fact, when the water is low, you can see remnants of a road that is still being used to this day. Obviously, not the part that's underwater, but it's called Highway 53. You can see remnants of that. You can see sunken boats. You can see batteries. You can see remnants of houses. You can see bleachers from the Gainesville Loopers Speedway, which I'm not sure if it was called Gainesville or Oscarville Speedway, but they did take part of Gainesville when they were forcing out the town, what was left of Oscarville. So literally, the blacks that fled Oscarville and went to Gainesville thought they were safe. Well, they weren't safe from the COE. So you can see that. You can also see sunken vehicles, which actually helped solve a crime from the 1900s, which we will get into in another story, because little do people know, Lake Lanier has a lady of the lake, and it involves a sunken vehicle. But when the water's low, you can also see trees. So we're going to take a little deep dive into the trees, okay? I personally haven't had very many like spooky Lake Lanier experiences, but my favorite thing to do in the summer, we had a boat. We still have a boat, but it's not in great condition. And we would go out every weekend on the lake. We would stop and get Subway and take our sandwiches on the boat. And my favorite thing to do was to go tubing. My dad could not get me off of that tube. I do not have a fear of a body of water or deep waters or anything. I love the ocean. I love deep water. I actually find like dark water soothing. Like when it looks black at night, I love that. I think it's so soothing. But he'd really struggled to get me off of that tube. And I couldn't really tell you why I was so terrified of Lake Lanier. I obviously didn't know like any of the history when I was younger. I just knew that something was off. I knew that there was a risk with trees being in the water because my parents had always told me like, just be careful, always wear a life jacket. Like there were stories of people's legs getting caught in trees, but I was not scared of trees. I was scared of Lake Lanier. Or maybe I was a professional tuber. Like, who knew? Maybe it was my calling. If you don't know about petrified trees, and I say petrified because they're technically not petrified under Lake Lanier, but it's just an easier term to use because nobody really knows like what the actual term means. So when the Corps of Engineers flooded the land to create the lake, millions of trees were obviously there, and they cut down the trees that they could see, like that would be visible in the water. They cut it down based on their predictions of the water level. Oh, also the Corps of Engineers only cut the trees that were visible in shallow areas. I forgot to mention that part. They didn't worry about the deep areas or like whatever. So they only cut the trees that would be visible in these shallow water depths. How do the trees remain intact, you ask? Well, I'm here to tell you. Okay, they remain intact because there's no bugs, there's no fungus, there's no bacteria that is keeping it from decomposing, and it is also the water below 40 feet. The water temperature is anywhere between 45 degrees to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. That's obviously right above freezing, so it keeps them in a constant dark and icy environment, which keeps them from decomposing. It keeps them from growing as well, but they just remain the same. Like, they're just there. They're just existing. I say, let it die, let it die, let it crumble up and die, or whatever the lyric says. Because the maximum the maximum depth of the lake is 160 feet. The trees remain intact because just think about, like, there's no sunlight down there. Like, I want to know what else is down there. You know, like, what kind of fish are lurking in that water? It's probably a megalodon in Lake Lanier for all I know. So a lot of the trees are still intact. They can be up to 60 feet tall, which means when the water is low, you can visibly see them. 60 feet tall is insane. Like, that's in the lake. That's crazy. So when the water's low, you can see tree limbs extend like 15 to 20 feet above the water. It's scary. So this obviously causes a big hazard if you don't have a sonar, you know, like the thing on your boat that like shows you what's under there, like how many feet you got, you know, in case you don't know what a sonar is, that's what it is. So Hall County Search and Rescue dive teams report that the trees tangled not only like fishing gear, like fishing lines, fishing hooks, they tangle ropes, they tangle swimmers' legs. Remember how I mentioned that? And limbs. So they make them underwater traps, and the trees are only claiming more lives in Lake Lanier. Anyways, construction of the dam required 50,000 acres of land. And so when it was completed, the Chattahoochee River smothered and covered, like those little hash browns you get at Waffle House, 38,000 acres of land, erasing the past, but only if the lake is full. Corps of Engineers definitely got what they wanted with the recreational side of things. Lake Lanier draws in between 10 to 12 million visitors a year. Some of those never coming back. Information on the lake's website says the COE leased the land to the Georgia Department of State Parks, and they created the Lake Lanier Islands Development Authority in 1962, which is also known as LLIDA. So if you ever hear me talk about that, use those acronyms. Again, it is the Lake Lanier Islands Development Authority. So their plan was to build a resort and recreation destination. The LLIDA partnered with Stouffer Hotels in 1974, and they opened the Pine Isle Resort and Golf Course, and it featured campgrounds, stables, a beach. It drew in thousands of people. However, by the summer of 2008, it became a burden. It was outdated, unprofitable, and it was unable to meet the demands of literally like any traveler. So Marriott Corporation ended up being the last owner, but it closed the hotel on November 4th, 2005. And they gave the control to the islands, to a local businessman named Virgil Williams. In early 2006, crews started dismantling the hotel, leading Williams to have a public sale of leftover contents. They sold like microwaves, refrigerators, beds, mattresses, like literally just sold whatever they could. They flattened the hotel completely and prepared for a $100 million 5-star resort replacement. You can actually look up pictures of them flattening the land, and I'm about to tell you more information about it, but like it took them years to dismantle this hotel. The 5-star resort replacement didn't end up happening and still hasn't because of a 2008 banking crash. And instead, Williams did a $25 million renovation of the island's other hotel that was built in 1989 called Emerald Point, which is actually now called Legacy Lodge. It reopened in 2008 as Legacy Lodge, which is now the primary hotel of Lake Lanier Islands. I actually just went there Sunday. Today's Wednesday. I went there Sunday for a bridal convention, and I must say it's really beautiful, but it does feel like a resort. I wouldn't say 5 stars, but it does feel like a resort, and it smells like a cruise ship in there. But we're going to back it up a bit to 1987. The park opened as Lake Lanier Islands Beach and Water Park, installing a massive engineering feat. It is the biggest wave pool in the southeast, which I've heard from people who used to work there that there is a sinkhole underneath it and it is going to collapse one of these days. I heard that a few years ago and it still hasn't collapsed, so I don't know how true that is. But they also featured body slides built into the hillside, with the park drawing all of Atlanta in, pretty much, drew in a lot of people. The park eventually rebranded as Lanier World as they added a wild river attraction. So they were constantly growing to try to keep up with everything. And it was making it a huge party scene with a stage, beach volleyball, fire pits, which are still there, and bars and full moon parties. I went to these full moon parties when I was younger, and I can't even explain to you the whole vibe of it. Like, everyone was just so happy, and there were like tiki torches and like DJs, and it was just so fun. They had like just so much to do for kids, and I wanted to put that in there. If you guys remember the full moon parties, it literally was like something to look forward to every full moon. Like, it was just so much fun. But they wanted to maximize the resort year-round because they were tired of it only being seasonal. So they implemented Snow Island and Magical Nights of Lights with an ice skating rink and snow tubing hills. I will say it is impressive the amount of lights that they have. I went last year because I worked there, so I got in for free. Other than that, I would not spend some dollars to take the whole family. It is very expensive. But in 2008, Safe Harbor Development, along with Jimmy Buffett, rebranded Lanier World as Margaritaville at Lanier Islands. And they tried their best to mimic a Caribbean-style getaway with the Southeast's most advanced water coasters and water slides. And it has just now been recently rebranded to Fins Up Water Park. So it's been called multiple things. It's been through the rounds. But I will say they really are trying. They really are trying. And when I was working there, you could tell that it was a work in progress. I almost forgot to mention this, but at Fins Up Water Park, when I was younger, it was still roped off, but they had part of the water park. It was like a little beach area and you could swim in the lake. But now it's completely roped off to where you can only put your feet in the water because of everything that happens there. So anyways, that wraps up the history on Oscarville, or what information is available online. I'm sure a lot of it was not documented for a reason, and it wasn't documented great anyways to begin with. And it also wraps up the history on Lake Sidney Lanier that we know of so far, and the water park, and the eerie history. I would like to go deeper, not into the water, on local legends, the high fatality rates, and personal experiences. So if you have anything you would like to share, you can email it to bonesbootsandbeauty@gmail.com. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Bones, Boots, and Beauty. Bones, Boots, and Beauty. Bones, Boots, and Beauty. Woohoo! Oh, maybe it's not. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I am curious to know what you didn't know about this, if you know anything about Lake Lanier, or what your favorite thing you learned was. If you could comment that down below, I would love to hear it. And I will see you guys in my next video, and I'll also see you in the deep end of Lake Sidney Lanier.